Hey guys, welcome back to my channel. Today we are building in Tiny Glade, and the first question you might rightfully ask when looking on the screen is, why is this the demo version of the game when the full version has released in September 2024? And the answer is that I built these tiny townhouses in summer of 2024 when the full game wasn't out yet. You might remember, you probably don't, but I shared one Tiny Glade video before this one, back when the demo first came out, where I actually was just doing a probably not very nice to watch walkthrough of the demo version and then build a tiny green castle. And in this video I said that I wanted to build at least one more build with the demo before the full version came out, and I actually did this. So I built this, and then it took me so very long to get around to editing this, and I wanted to release some Sims 4 video before that, since that is what I normally do in this channel. And then it was actually September, the full version of Tiny Glade came out, and I thought that I should probably make a walkthrough of that as well, since I did this for the demo and I wanted to show all of the new features that were added with the full version. So what I did is that I set everything up for actually filming this video. So I made a build in all of the different types of glades so I could show off all the different sceneries, and that I would have a nice frame to show all the additional new features. And then I waited so long with actually recording that video that at some point it just didn't make any sense anymore, because the full version had been out for such a long time and so many people had recorded walkthroughs that were just so much better than anything I could have ever produced. So I gave up on this idea and thought that I should probably just release this one instead, and then just continue building new stuff with the full version of the game, and then just sharing, regular Tiny Glade speed builds. And then, as you might know, I disappeared from YouTube for over 1 year. I haven't really talked about that in detail so far because nobody actually cares. But yeah, I only sort of came back in December of last year, and again I had a really long break, and now I'm really trying to get back into YouTube somehow, and I still had this footage, so I came back to the idea of making this video actually. So the next question you might also very rightfully ask, does it make sense to share this, considering that the demo has expired such a long time ago and the full version of the game has been out for such a long time and so many new features have been added? And I'm honestly not sure, but I still really like how these townhouses turned out. I still think they are cute and nice to look at, and I still very much like them, and I didn't want all the footage to go to waste basically, because I still think it's a nice build. I mean, it's obviously not nearly as great as what I've seen other people build with Tiny Glade. Like, every time I look through the screenshots on Steam or I go through YouTube and see Tiny Glade videos, I'm literally so in awe of what people build with this game, and I feel I could never, unfortunately. But yeah, you can definitely build extremely ambitious, crazy, insane stuff with this game. And I know in comparison to this is rather poor, but I still like how it turned out. And I also thought that maybe it would be interesting. Interesting is a big word probably, but yeah, I thought it might be nice to have a little throwback to the demo version, just to see how far the game has come since then. Because even at release, we had so many new features. We had so many new color options. We had the half-timbered walls. We had the little flags. We had chimneys, which you will see I'm trying to create custom chimneys with these townhouses, and thank God we do not have to do that anymore, because this was tedious. This was so tedious. But yeah, we got chimneys, we got so much cool new stuff, and obviously also the different types of glades that are super beautiful. And now we also got the movable clutter in the meantime. We got the stairs, we got new options for the terrain, and a water feature, obviously, that was part of the first release, I think. But the game has honestly just come really far, and so it might be a nice thing to just look back and see that even with the demo, you could build so much amazing stuff, even though the options were limited. So yeah, I thought that I still want to release this footage, even though it's over 1.5 years old. I'm aware that it feels a little bit obsolete to still post this now, but yeah, as I said, I still like the outcome and I still wanted to share it in some way. I realized that it's sort of awkward how so many times on this channel, like also with Sims 4, I kind of just give you videos where the footage is literally years old because I'm so bad at sticking to my projects and keeping up a regular upload schedule and then disappear for several months or even years. Like, I realize it's awkward and I don't want to, like, I want to share stuff that's fresh. And so with future Tiny Glade videos, I will definitely do that. Like, next Tiny Glade video you're going to see on this channel will definitely be built with the current version of the game. But for now, I'm just trying to get back into YouTube and trying to get back into posting. And yeah, that was like another reason why I decided to use the footage from the demo version of the game. Now, this video again turned out rather long, which is probably not surprising on this channel because I notoriously cannot keep my videos short, as it seems. But with Tiny Glade, I also feel that I cannot speed up the footage as much as I could with Sims 4 because, you know, you always have the trees, the grass, the sheep moving. So I tried speeding it up a little bit more, but I'm actually getting a little bit nauseous if it's too fast because of that movement in the background, which you do not have in The Sims 4. So I sped it up only 3 times, which I think is still pleasant to look at. But yeah, obviously the footage is not as fast as it would be for my Sims 4 stuff. But I think for Tiny Glade it's also okay because it's just a very cozy and chill game. So I was okay with it being a little bit longer. I'm still really surprised that I managed to edit it down to like 45 minutes because I had so much footage. It took me a surprisingly long time building this for reasons that I will talk about later. But yeah, I think it didn't even turn out at that long as I suspected it would. And because of that length, I will probably not talk throughout the entirety of the video, which I suppose that for Tiny Glade, a lot of people would prefer like just ambience or music in the background anyway, and just have no commentary. I'm sorry, I just always prefer doing voiceovers, and in this case I also felt the need to just explain why I'm building this with the demo version, but I might not talk through the entirety of this video. There will be sections probably where I just leave you with some music, and then I just will be back when I feel the need to explain something that's going on screen. But for the beginning, I wanted to mention that I was sort of inspired to build this by one of my favorite games of all time, that is Anno 1404. I always come back to play this. This is one of my, I don't know, top 10 games of all time probably, because it is also sort of nostalgic to me, but I just really love the game. And I really like the townhouses in this game, and I was a little bit inspired by that to build this little town square. I also once tried to recreate some of the Anno townhouses in Sims 4 and didn't really get very far, but yeah, I was kind of inspired by that, I guess. Now, obviously, Anno is a very rectangular game, and with the demo version, we had this little round square. So for this reason, obviously, I was kind of forced to arrange these houses in sort of a circle or half circle. But I really, really like the look of that. I think at the beginning I was also playing with the thought of having this built on a slope, because at the very beginning I was messing around with the terrain tool, and then I decided against this at some point because I couldn't really make it work. I feel that in every game, like also in A Sims 4 and now here Tiny Glade, also in other building related games, I always kind of scare away a little bit from the terrain tool because I find it sometimes a little bit difficult to work with. Now in Tiny Glade it's obviously way more intuitive to work with than it would be in The Sims 4, for example, but for this build and in this limited space I couldn't really make it work for what I had in mind, and so at some point of the video I just decided to flatten the terrain completely. But in future Tiny Glade videos that I actually definitely plan on making, I'll try around a little bit more with the terrain tool, because I feel this is also kind of what defines this game and what makes this game so great, how easy it is to mess with the terrain and how the builds also adapt to the terrain. So yeah, obviously I will do this in future builds, but for this one it just didn't really make a lot of sense. And I prefer the look of this just being like a flat, round town square. I also tried my best to make all the houses look very individual. So with the first one, I knew I wanted to have these arcades, and it didn't really quite work out in the way that I had in mind. So I wanted there to be more arcade arches, but I think I should have made the house wider to actually be able to create at least 2 nicely shaped arches. So in the end, I just went with that one that is very wide. height. And just in general, for all the houses, I try to use different types of roofs. Like for the third one, I turned the roof around and then added this big dormer. I also played around with the different color options. There weren't as many of them in the demo, but I tried to use like the natural wood tones, the red, the green. I also changed the roof colors. I added a little Oriel to that one house and just try to really make these houses look interesting and individual. The two last houses I had, one have like a little platform in front of the entrance door, and for the other one I had stairs leading up to the door. And sometimes I was using like the plaster wall and sometimes the brick wall. There was also the third option of having yellow walls in the demo, but it did not really fit in this case, so I just swapped between the plaster and the gray brick. And yeah, so I really tried to give every house its own character and its own characteristic details. And I had a lot of fun with it. So I'm going to leave you with music for some minutes, and then I'll be back when there's some more things to talk about. Now, I wasn't entirely sure what to do with the front of this little town square, so obviously I didn't want to cover up the view with an additional build. So at first I made this little fenced off area that I think was actually supposed to be sort of a sheep enclosure, but I didn't really like it because it looked very wonky and yeah, it just was very ugly. And then I deleted the fence and the sheep tragically escaped. But yeah, I then decided to turn this into a little garden area. So I just left the front of this little area that goes towards the square open, and I decided that I would just add some flowers in there. I think that now the flower tool in the game works a little bit differently than it did back in the demo, because I think now if you click once you get like the flowers, if you click twice you get the bushes, and when the demo version was out you still basically could only place bushes mixed with flowers, and then you had to remove the bushes very carefully to just be left with the flowers, which was a little bit of a tedious work. So I tried to do that, and then I still didn't really like the outcome because I did not like the look of this area being so closed off. So at some point I then just deleted all the walls entirely, and only later I come back to this. And what I will do is that at the back of the flowers, so towards the outside, I add a little wall. And I actually wanted the wall to get gradually lower, so I had to cut it into several small pieces and just make them always lower, going from right to left. And I also did not like the look of the little platform where the stairs are leading up to. So I also tried to cover up the side of it with a wall. And yeah, it was kind of a really long process. And it's very funny because we are actually already done with the crucial part of this speed build, which is the town square itself and the front of the houses. And what took me way longer than that was actually adding all these small customizations and details, and me just playing around with different things to add some last touches, and then obviously also the back of the houses. But yeah, I feel I spent most time with the speed build with things like this garden wall, or later with the chimneys, or with sort of a little bench. I'll get back to this later, but that was a little bit crazy how much time I spent on that. And then the last thing I actually do on the town square itself is adding a little well. And you see me creating a little circle with walls, and then I don't really do anything with it. I think I wanted to have a well there from the beginning, but I did not really know how to do it. And then in between, I watched a video by Freakout3516. If you play Tiny Glade, you might already know him, but he made these really, really helpful videos with tips and tricks on how to build in Tiny Glade. And I can absolutely recommend checking out his channel and his videos, because it was just very helpful for me to learn new stuff about building in this game. And he definitely pointed out a lot of things that I would have never thought of myself. And watching one of his videos, he actually shows how to create a nice looking well. And then I tried to do this here for this build as well. So what you do according to his video is that you just place a round build there, like the tiniest size that you can make it. And then you just very carefully touch it with the eraser, and then you end up with a ruined shape that is basically a perfect circle. And then you have to just close it very carefully with the wall tool, and then you can turn it into a well. You can use the lanterns for, you know, that wooden construction above a well where the bucket would hang. And if you will, you can also interpret the lantern as sort of a bucket. But yeah, I tried to do that. And then I also used like these very slim wall pieces to cover up the bottom of the lantern, because I really wanted it to look like the wood is sticking in the stone walls of the well. So I covered up the lower part with some extra wall pieces. And yeah, this was also something that took me a lot of time to figure out. And yeah, as I said, I feel the most part of the video is just me trying to make things like that work. But I think in the end it looked really nice. And then again, as I said, I'll go back to this little garden area and then add this wall. And it just took me some time to get it to look like what I had in mind. But we are getting there. It just takes me a lot of time. so something weird is going to happen next. I don't know what that was, but actually I was just trying to create a little bench underneath this window, or I think it was supposed to be a little bench, but honestly I'm not quite sure anymore because the process of building this and adding to this and working on this just got a little bit strange and way too long, and I honestly don't know why I kept going back to this. I think it was because at some point there were just plants clipping through the stones. I did not really know how to get rid of them. I just did not like how it looked, and yeah, it was a whole process that took me way too long, and I'm going to get back to this later on. And also, isn't that sheep so nice? Like, I love how in this game you just get sheep randomly flying over the screen, over your houses with their little red umbrellas. It's just something that brings you joy. Yeah, I'm also building the first of the chimneys, and luckily, as I said before, and as you obviously already know, we have the chimneys in the full version of the game, like real animated chimneys with smoke coming out of them, and we do not need to go through that super tedious process to build chimneys. I got that idea from Freak Out as well, and basically what you had to do to create this fake chimney was to place like a little wall piece and then kind of rotate it on the spot, if this makes sense. And then you would, if you were lucky, you would get this little round column, but you had to try it so many times. Like for this, I think it went pretty smoothly, but for some of the other chimneys I created, I redid it over and over again. Like for some of the others, I also created, because this one is on the inside of the house, but some of the others were basically on the outside. So I created like, I don't know how to call it, but like a rectangular bottom piece for them. And for one of them, I think I redid it about 20 times. And going through the footage to edit it was so frustrating because I watched myself build this chimney over and over and over again. And every time I thought, so this must be the version that I stick to. This must be my final take on that. And then I delete everything again and redo it. And one time it looked really absolutely perfect. And I really was so hopeful that that would be my last try. And then I just deleted everything again. And I was like, girl, this looked good. You did not have to delete it. You do not have to be that perfectionist. There was nothing wrong with that chimney. But yeah, I did cut out most of this because luckily you do not have to do that anymore. So we are back working on this weird little bench that has actually stopped looking like a bench a long time ago. And let's be real, it has actually never really looked like a bench. But yeah, my problem here was that, as I said before, I did not like all the plants and especially that lilac flower being visible through the stones. And so I tried covering them up and it didn't really work, or it worked at some point, but then I still had these green plants in front being in the way, which I cannot really understand now why that annoyed me that much, but for some reason it did, and so I keep adding wall pieces to what is now basically only a pile of stones. Like it just looks like a lot of bricks lying atop of each other, and I think this was then what I was actually going with. Like I thought, okay, we have that pile of timber lying there, why shouldn't there be just some bricks lying next to this house that probably were leftovers from some construction site and were never removed, like I don't know. And yeah, that was it. But I don't fully know what was going on here and what was going through my mind, and I'm really sorry that you had to watch this, but yeah, at some point I was actually done with it. One has to admire the patience I had with this, because I cannot fully get behind why this was so important to me, but apparently it was. Also, in the full version of the game, there is a bench among the clutter, and because this is movable now, we can just place a bench wherever we want to, which is really, really nice. And this would have saved me such a lot of time when I was building this, but honestly, I could have also just stopped. Like, nobody forced me to do this, and as I said, I don't really know what was going on in my mind here. What I also really love about this game is that you can adapt the angle the light is falling on your builds. And I was doing this when I decorated the back, so I always had nice lighting, and that is something I wish we had in The Sims 4. It would make building on certain lots so much more enjoyable. Like, I realize it's not exactly realistic, but it's just extremely nice for building, and it made decorating the back way more enjoyable than it would have been otherwise. So we are moving on to decorating the back of these houses, and I just try to keep the back in the style that I decorated the front in. So as you might have noticed, I also chose different types of windows for the different houses. So for some I went with the flower boxes in front of the windows, for some I chose windows with shutters, for some I chose the bare windows, and for some I chose the ones with the towels hanging in front of it, or the pieces of cloth. And especially with I think it's the fourth house from the left. Basically, all the windows have a cloth hanging in front of it. And I thought that maybe this is like a tailor's house or belongs to somebody who just, for whatever reason, works with cloth and fabric. And yeah, while I was building, I was just imagining which people would be living in these houses. And so, I don't know, maybe in the first one with the arcades, maybe that's the mayor's house. And I think there's one with a little wagon wheel in front of it. So maybe the person living there builds them. And yeah, so I was just trying to come up with a little bit of a backstory to inspire the decoration of these houses. Also on this side I added some more bump outs and dormers and just a lot of stuff to make the builds feel more alive. And obviously I added a chimney to all of the builds, but I'll spare you from actually having to watch that. realized that when I said that I would spare you the construction of all the chimneys, that wasn't entirely true, because obviously I forgot how much of it I still left in the video, but I tried to edit it down as much as I could so you do not have to see the entire tedious process. And this is the last one. Like, I'm sorry that you had to go through all of this. Also, very random thing to say, but I love how in this game you can just raise up the houses to build underneath them and then put them back in their position as if nothing happened. Like, that's just a very fun thing to do. And with that chimney of this particular house, I then had the problem with that bird's nest just being in very weird positions and me trying around with the roof and with the dormers to just have it appear somewhere where it made more sense. And I think after a lot of trial and error, I decided to completely delete the dormers, and then I had the bird's nest in a very nice position, and then I was happy with that. And I think this is pretty much one of the last things that we do in this video. So we are coming really close to the end of the speed build. I will add some screenshots in the end where we also see these townhouses at different times of the day, because I just think the lighting in this game is so beautiful, and I wanted to show this little town in some different lighting situations. So you will get screenshots of how it looks at night and at dusk, at dawn, because I just really like the look of that. And with that, yeah, we are pretty much at the very end. Thank you so much for watching. I know this was a little bit chaotic. I'm still trying to figure out what's the best way for me to edit Tiny Glade videos, and as I said, to get back into video editing in general. And I also realized that the fact that the footage is so old was not exactly ideal, but I still hope that you somewhat enjoyed it, and if you did, please consider leaving a thumbs up and maybe even subscribing to the channel. That would be so much appreciated, and it would really help me out. I hope to be back rather soon with a new video. It will probably be a Sims 4 video this time, but I'm definitely planning on making more Tiny Glade videos, this time with the full version of the game. And in the meantime, until the next video, have a great week and stay safe. Bye!